Welcome to the Short-Term Rental Playmaker Podcast, where we break down what it really takes to win in short-term rentals in today's market. From insider tips and emerging trends to real conversations with top playmakers in the space, this show gives you the tools, strategies, and mindset to build and scale a successful short-term rental business. Now, here's your host, Joe Roney.
Today's episode is brought to you by Savvy STR Agents, the short-term rental real estate experts helping investors find profitable vacation rental properties nationwide. If you're serious about scaling your STR portfolio, Savvy STR Agents should be your first call.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Short-Term Rental Playmaker Podcast. Today we're going to kind of have a little solo episode, have a little fun. We're going to talk about buying your first short-term rental and analysis paralysis, and kind of what that looks like. And the reason why I want to bring this up today is because, we're back to school season's here, right? So, everybody's back to school now, or if you're not back to school, your kids are going back to school this week. The phone calls that I've gotten over the past 30 days are like 70% people that have never owned a short-term rental and they're looking for their first one, and they're having analysis paralysis, so they're trying to figure out where they can get the funds from. So we're going to kind of break it all down a little bit and, kind of what it takes to get that first one, and, what to look at and what not to, and the whole work. So, the first thing I want to bring up is, really identify where your market wants to be, right? So what market do you want to invest in? And I tell everyone, you need to invest in a market that you want to go to. You need to invest in a market that you want to be in, right? Yes, it is a data-driven, numbers-driven decision. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. You have to have a data-driven decision when it's all said and done. But when you're deciding on where you want to be, you need to be able to envision where you're going to, where your property is, what type of property you want to invest in, and make sure that you really understand, what it's going to take to manage from afar, because you more than likely don't live in that market, and that's okay. But you definitely are going to want to see it, this property. You're going to want to go there and visit it a couple times a year. So identifying your market has to be the first step. At Savvy, we have the market match team that you can talk to them. They can talk to you about your budget and give you a couple market ideas. If you have no idea where you want to invest in, we can definitely help you with that. Now, the biggest thing that I see with people is analysis paralysis. And I've had people that I've helped purchase short-term rentals, and they sat on the sidelines for a year or 2 years or 3 years. I'm, working with a client now that's like, well, we want to make this offer, but we want it to be way less than what, it's on the market for. And the interest rates are still kind of high. So we needed to come down to here. And it was an emotional decision. It had nothing to do with the data, because when I had the conversation with the client is, show me the data where the numbers don't work here. And it was more of like, well, we just feel like the market is here and that's where it needs to be. Well, what we feel and reality are two different things. So, when we're analyzing data, we need to analyze data, but we also need to be realistic, right? Just because a house is on the market for $600 and you think the numbers work at $425 doesn't mean you're going to get that house for $425, because they ain't going to sell it to you. The question is, does the house work at $600 or maybe $575? Because, we're going to negotiate some deals. We're going to get some money off of it, maybe get some closing costs paid, whatever it may be. But you have to be realistic. So you can't go into buying your first short-term rental thinking, all the prices are inflated and I'm just going to lowball a bunch of offers until someone says yes. And, can that happen? Sure. That's like finding a needle in a haystack, right? Because the market is what the market is, and the market's going to dictate the price. And when you're looking at analysis paralysis, so step number one is having realistic expectations on what your offer is going to be. Step number two on analysis paralysis is, truly making it all about the numbers, right? What is your bare minimum on your potential cash on cash return, or your ROI? And, what is your budget? What kind of money do you have for down payment? What kind of money do you have for amenities? So setting those clear expectations up front, writing out what a pro forma really looks like, what do the expenses look like? What do the taxes and the insurance and pool cleaning and all that stuff? And then, when we're running out performance, we're looking at, I like to have the first column say, this is your break-even point, right? Your first year in a first short-term rental, you are not going to hit top tier numbers, right? You're not going to hit the 125th percentile in your first year as running a short-term rental. Don't pretend that you are, because it's not going to happen. So you have to run your numbers conservatively and say, okay, this is my break even. This is where the average properties are doing. Like, this is where the average to maybe slightly above average properties are doing. Okay, that's only going to be a 10 to 12% return, but that's not awful. I'm still positive cash flow. And then as I learn more, when I knock it out of the park over here, this is what the potential is. This is where I could be. But it's really important to understand the data and understand the numbers on where you got there. And the numbers that I like to look at are real numbers and AirDNA and STR Insights and, Data Rabu. So there's lots of different data platforms. What you don't want to do is just type in an address into the address bar and let it tell you what it thinks the revenue is going to be. Because 99.999% of the time, that is false information. All it's looking at is the average properties that are also 4 bedrooms that may or may not have pools, depending on what parameters you put in there, and saying, here you go. But that's competing against other property managers that may or may not be good. That may be competing against a property that's average. That may be competing against another property that's, top of the line. Like, you have to really dig in and identify what are the 3 to 5 properties that you are going to compete with. When you look at what type of property you want to buy, whether it be a condo, a house, doesn't matter. You need to look at your competition and say, okay, if I'm buying in this condo complex, I go to AirDNA and these are the top 3 or top 5 2-bedroom condos in this complex. Or if I'm in the houses, these are the top 3 or top 5 houses that are 4 bedrooms with in-ground pools, and this is the numbers that they are doing. And that's where you're getting your data from. And the things that you got to look at on AirDNA, like, you got to make sure that it's been there enough days. 325 days or more is what I typically look at. And, it's got, more than a dozen reviews. If it's got 3 or 4 reviews, the data is usually pretty skewed. It's just giving you estimates. But the more data that's in there, the more reviews, the longer that it's been on the market, the more real the data is. Then you can use somebody in the market that can get you real data. So like in my market, we co-host and own a total of 12 properties, adding our 13th one right now with the new build. And in those 12 properties, I can pull you actuals. I can pull you actual data. I can pull you actual, ADRs and actual, rental numbers. And it's not just I'm hoping this data that I'm pulling is accurate. It's accurate. It's 100% accurate because it's coming directly from Airbnb and VRBO and our property management system. So when you're working with a realtor that owns and manages in the market, and a lot of the savvy agents, or the majority of our savvy agents do, they're going to be able to pull that real data for you. So instead of scrape data, you're getting the real thing. So we're going to look at those top 3 and 5 properties. Now, someone asked me, and I just got an email from someone the other day. I said, so I see you're looking at everything in the 90th to 100 percentile or more. And realistically, most hosts are not going to be in there. And I got an email, and he's like, I just want to make sure I understand, because the majority of hosts are not going to operate in that percentile. And you're right. Not all hosts are going to operate in the 90th to 120th percentile. But if you're out there buying a short-term rental and your goal is to be average, don't buy a short-term rental. Right? Nobody goes into the concrete business to be like, I'm going to be the average concrete guy. No, you go in there to make money, right? You go in there to be the best so you can build a reputation and make money. Google didn't go and be like, yeah, I'm going to be like DuckDuckGo. Don't get me wrong. I love DuckDuckGo. But no, they built themselves to be Google. If you're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy a short-term rental, you better not be going there to be average, period. If you think your 50th to 60th percentile is going to make you money, it ain't. You're going to lose money. And you're going to be one of these other hundreds of thousands of people that have their house on the market right now because they're losing money because they didn't invest in their property. So I know I'm here to talk about analysis paralysis, but that's the real facts. You have to go into business planning to be the best. And if you're not, you shouldn't go into business, period, no matter what business it is. And your short-term rental, it's a business. It's not a side hustle. Now, for some of you, it may not be a business. For some of you, you may just want to buy a short-term rental, hire a property manager. You don't care if it's cash flowing. It may break even. It may cost you a little money. It may make you a little money. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to people that are trying to get into this business to be the top and the best of the best, because they're in this business to make cash. They're in this business, for Bill Face 550, 250 plan, 5 properties that do $50,000 a year profit each to bring you $250,000 a year. That's the people that I'm talking to in this podcast. Now, kind of shifting back to analysis paralysis a little bit, because this is where it gets really hard, because you can look at all these different data platforms and you can look at all the different things, and then you start looking at houses and you're like, ooh, will that hit this number? Will that do this, or will this do that? Well, if you did your research up front and understood exactly what you were writing down, what your buy box is, specifically what type of property that you want to buy, you're not going to have as much analysis paralysis. If you're looking in 6 different markets today, looking at short-term rentals, you're never going to buy one. You got to narrow it down. And it's okay to look at more than one market. I'm not saying to narrow it down to just this street and this market. No, that's not what I'm saying. But you need to narrow it down and understand what your goals are. And when you have those written down and you truly understand, then the analysis paralysis kind of goes away, because you can be confident in what you're doing, and you can be confident in your purchase, and you can be confident in your abilities. So even if this is your very, very first short-term rental, it is okay to not hit a home run. If this is your 10th short-term rental, it's okay to not hit a complete home run. Don't get me wrong. We all aim to hit a home run on every single investment that we do. The honest truth is your first investment, especially, is probably not going to be a home run. We just closed on our Scottsdale, Arizona property. And, I think we made a really, really good decision. We got a really great property. And I think we're going to hit a home run on it when it's all said and done. But there was other properties that may have, been a little bit better properties, but needed more work or needed more updating or whatever it may be. But this is the one that we found that we were like, this is it. Like, we feel like this is the one. And, as you're watching this, we're working on it. We're setting it up right now. We're hoping to go live in the next week and a half and be done. But our very first property, we didn't hit a home run. Back in 2022, when we bought our first short-term rental, we bought a 2-bedroom, 2-bath for $425,000. And I had analysis paralysis for at least 6 months to a year. And my wife finally one morning said, if you don't buy one, let's start looking at other businesses, because I'm tired of talking about it. And well, we wrote an offer that day. It was Sunday, August 8th, actually. So we're 2 days, when I filmed this, we're a couple days away from it. So just a couple weeks ago from when you see this. It was Sunday, August 8th in 2022. So officially, I've been in the short-term rental business now for 4 years. And that was our day that my wife's like, it's time to shit or get off the pot. And we had narrowed down to some properties. None of them were it. And there was a property that just hit the market that weekend. And we're like, we both fell in love with it. We call it our classic beach house. It was our first short-term rental. And it was a little 2-bedroom, 2-bath. Had a big backyard with a fire pit in it. It was, cute, decorated inside. We had to do some updates. It was an older home. I had done a lot of analysis, but what I didn't analyze is homes built in the 1970s. We're going to have a little bit higher insurance. And in this street, we couldn't add a pool because most of the homes were on septic. So did we hit a home run on this property? Nope. Sure didn't. Did we make money on this property? Yes, we did. We did $65,000 a year on a property that we paid $425,000 for. So that's roughly a 15% gross ROI. I really look at that 20% gross ROI now as kind of the standard that I'm looking for as of that potential. But we did the best we could, and it was positive cash flow of $3,000 to $5,000 for the couple of years that we owned it. But it wasn't, it was going to cost us way too much money to remove the septic, way too much money to at a pool for a 2-bedroom house that was built in 1979. 2 years later, we upgraded. We sold it. We only made like $25,000, $30,000. Well, we made $30,000 on it. We bought it for $425, sold it for $455. We moved that money, bought a new 4-bedroom, 4-bath, and that property has been making us $30,000 a year, last year, and on pace to do it again this year. And now, we might actually get closer to that $40,000 this year. So, we're, I can't even still say we hit a home run, but we definitely hit a much better hit than we did on the first one. But we got in the game. In 2022, instead of sitting on the sidelines, we got in the game. And that day forward, our lives have completely changed. Like night and day difference in the 4 years since we bought our first short-term rental. So, if we didn't make that decision that day, and my wife didn't kick me and say, go buy this, let's put an offer on this today, you know what? I may not be on this podcast studio for my 103rd episode and may not be selling $60 million a year in real estate and doing the things that we're doing today, because that one decision to finally say, stop analyzing and just take the leap and just jump is what got us into this business. So, analysis paralysis is a real thing. We're going to shift into one more topic, and it's going to talk about, you're buying doesn't matter if it's your first short-term rental, your 5th short-term rental, or your 500th, doesn't matter. What are you doing to get your down payment? And what does it take to be in the short-term rental space today, right? So the majority of investment property loans are going to be 20% down. Now, we actually just closed on a 15% down bank 1099 loan, which was great. It was a little bit less down payment, left us a little more cash flow for our updates, but the majority of investment property loans are going to be 20% down. There are some 10% down second home loans as well. And my friend Parker just announced yesterday that they have a 10% down true investment product that they just came out with. So you can get in at 10% down. You can get in at 20% down. I like 20% down because I like that equity play right off the bat. You got a little more into it. If you're new and you're buying your first short-term rental, you don't have a full 20% down, go get that 10% down. But if you're in the $600,000 range for an investment property, your down payment is $60,000. Then you're going to need some money for closing costs. Now, in many situations, we're getting closing costs paid. And closing costs could be anywhere from, 1 to 3% of the property. In Florida, it's on the higher end because we have dock stamp fees and higher taxes and higher insurance, just like Texas and a few other areas where if you buy a short-term rental where I just bought in Scottsdale, my closing costs were next to nothing compared to, a Florida property. So make sure you have a little money for that area for your closing costs. Then you need to make sure you have some money set up for reserves, especially if you're going into the slow season when you're closing. If you're closing in, August through October and your busy season is the summer, you're going to have a little bit of carrying costs in the winter. So you're going to need that 3 to 6 months of holding cost of at least the mortgage payment, right? You're going to make enough rents to probably cover a good chunk of that month in and month out, but you want to at least have enough money for the mortgage payment for up to 6 months. So at $5,000 mortgage payment, $600,000 home, 400. Let's just call it a $400,000 or $4,000 a month mortgage payment after taxes and insurance. You need 6 months. You need another $24,000 in the bank just to make sure that you're good. So now you're at 60. We'll scratch the closing costs. 24 for the carrying costs. You're at 84. Now you need renovations and design because more than likely you're going to have to go in and redesign this property. So I like to say $5,000 per bedroom. That should cover your bedroom and bathroom. And then another $10,000 for the living space and another $10,000 to $20,000 for the outdoor space if you have a backyard. If you're in a condo, 2-bedroom condo, living space, you could easily do that whole thing for $20,000. No big deal. 4-bedroom home with a backyard, you're probably going to be around 40, 45,000, maybe 50. This is also doing the majority of the work yourself. It is going to go up if you're hiring it out. And if you're looking to get bonus depreciation and tax benefits and all those things at the end of the year, you need to be doing the work yourself anyway because you need those 100 hours. You got to get the bonus depreciation. You got to get your material participation in there. You're going to be doing the work yourself. That doesn't mean you can't hire a handyman to come in and help you run electric or assemble furniture or anything like that. But you need to get in there and do the work yourself. So in order to get your hours and save your money. So the final thing that I'm going to talk about on buying your first short-term rental is the time that from the day that you close to the day that it goes live. What does that look like? Okay. This is crucial to making sure your numbers are correct. When you're running a pro forma, if you're thinking you're going to have a 6-month renovation, and that's okay if you do, you're buying a fixer-upper, it's going to take you 3 months, 4 months, whatever it is, and you're not going to go live until, January, February, that's fine. But you need to factor in those numbers in your pro forma, in your data analysis, to understand that you're going to need that extra $20,000 or $30,000 in carrying costs that are going to be added on to everything else that you do. So I like having a property up and running in 7 to 10 days. There's no reason why you can't do this. And, even if you're going to do major renovations, maybe you wait and do those in the slow season. And we're going into the slow season now for my area. So, a lot of my clients right now are doing that. But you should be designing and setting things up way before closing. And you should be ordering things roughly the week of closing. Side note, do not put that on a credit card that's in your name if you're getting ready to close. Business credit card, fine. Don't put additional debt until after closing day. If you have to wait till after closing day because you're going to use a 0% interest credit card or your HELOC or whatever it may be, fine. Wait till 24 hours after close. Do that then. And then it might take you 2 weeks because you got to have 3 to 5 days for all those products to get in. We are in a world of technology today that you can literally order something in the morning and it's at your doorstep sometimes by the afternoon. Okay, so we are really fortunate going back 4, 5, 6 years ago or 10 years ago when you're setting up a short-term rental where you're having to do this stuff months in advance. You ain't got to do that in today's world. I have an account care representative in Wayfair, and I'm always like, all right, we need product next week. And she's like, oh, well, I need 30 days in advance. I'm like, well, I can go to your website and I can get it next week. So what's this account care representative doing for me when I can literally just go to the website and order it and have it next week? So sorry, getting onto a tangent. You need to plan on getting your house ready in 7 days. 7 to 10 days, done, ready to go. Make sure it's up and live. Make sure you start making money right away. Really, really important. So that's the main thing I really want to talk about today. So, analysis paralysis is a real thing, but if you sit around and have analysis paralysis, you're going to be sitting on the sidelines while everybody is making leaps and bounds. Okay. Not every single property has to be a home run or a grand slam, but it does need to be a data-driven decision. And you need to make sure you have those goals set up and outlined and fill out those pro formas and understand your numbers. That's all I got for this week. Thanks for joining me on the Short-Term Rental Playmaker.